Good morning, everybody. Today we have another of our lovely guests. This time it is Mariella Superina from Argentina. Welcome, Mariella. A pleasure to have you.
Thank you, Fabricio. Thank you for the invitation.
Well, before we start, I would like to let Mariella give a little introduction about herself, about the work, and especially about Pink Fairy Armadillos, a super nice species I would love to see one day.
Yeah, me too, to be honest. But we'll get to that later on. I am originally Swiss, from Switzerland. I studied veterinary medicine in Switzerland and got a doctoral degree in veterinary medicine working with armadillos, which is unusual because armadillos are South American animals. But I got so fascinated by them that I decided to continue working with them. And then I got a PhD in conservation biology at University of New Orleans, for which I did research on armadillos in South America, specifically in Argentina. So that's how I landed here. And I've been living here in Argentina, in Mendoza, for 20 years now, working with armadillos.
Wow, and that's a lot of years, and it's amazing, Here where I live, we do have armadillos. I think just two species, I think, and well,
Exactly.
they are not that common, but you do see them. I really enjoy them too. They are, like very interesting. Their behavior, and normally it isn't that they don't like humans, but they prefer to have their space and well, yeah. So, Mariella, what can you tell us about the place where you are in Argentina? How is it? How are Pink Fairy Armadillos doing?
Well, I live in Mendoza, which is a semi-arid region. So we have desert, we have some part of Patagonia in the southern part of Mendoza. So my background is actually one of our protected areas, which is very beautiful. So once the pandemic ends, I can only invite you to come and visit us and see these beautiful places.
Thank you, Mariella. It would be lovely for me to go there. Really. I have family in Argentina actually, and yeah, I would really love to go there one day.
You have to come visit us then. So here we have several species of armadillos. I mainly work with peaches, which is a small armadillo species that weighs about 1 kilo and is intensively hunted everywhere. But pink fairy armadillos have caught my attention years ago because they are so different. So I kind of became obsessed with them. I wanted to see one. So it's not that easy.
You haven't
Uh,
seen one yet?
I I have never seen one in the wild
Oh, in the wild.
because, uh, as you certainly know, armadillos dig burrows, so it is always difficult to find them. Now, pink fairy armadillos are even more difficult because they live almost exclusively on the ground. So go find them.
Yeah,
I I work a lot with the locals, and it's funny. We had an experience last year that a Japanese film team came to Argentina, and they wanted to film pink fairy armadillos. I said, well, I would love to, but it will be almost impossible to
extremely
find them.
difficult. Yeah. Well, you know that pink fairy armadillos are one of the rarest species of armadillos that exists. And if if in the past they were very rare, now they are more rare, even more rare. They have many threats, right? Like,
Well, it is difficult to say actually if they are threatened or not. So, for example, we interviewed a lady in the field. She had been living there for over 80 years in the middle of nowhere in the desert. And so that Japanese film team interviewed them and asked if she had seen a pink fairy armadillo. She said, oh, yeah, I've seen one. So, how many have you seen all of your life? She said, three. in 80 years. And she lives in an area where pink fairy armadillos occur. So imagine how difficult it is to see them and to study them. So this makes it very difficult for us to know if they are threatened or not, because we don't know where they are, how many there are, and what threats they have. So
And that
we know, for example, that
and that is
people,
one of the reasons why they are classified as data deficient by the IUCN, right? Yeah.
exactly. It is very difficult to know. I mean, we suspect that, for example, land use change is affecting them, but we don't really know how much, you know. Imagine they live underground at about 15 centimeters below the ground. So if a goat herd is running over the sand dune where that pink fairy armadillo lives, I guess it's not very nice for the pink fairy armadillo, but we don't know how much it affects them.
Of course,
So
it is not nice, and yes, that's one of the things that makes your work very special for conservation and for the public in general, because you are pioneering in the story of this species. As you have said, many things are still not known, and I know it is difficult. You haven't even seen one in the wild, but that's what makes this special. That's what makes this as important as caring for a more known species like elephants or great apes. You know, sometimes these kinds of animals are underrated, and they shouldn't be. They are just as amazing, and they are one of the parts that make the animal world simply beautiful and very interesting to learn about.
right. So imagine everybody knows the nine-banded armadillo, for example, and they say, well, they're not attractive. So they think that all armadillos are the same. And so they don't know what a pink fairy armadillo is. I mean, just listen to the name, Pink Fairy. So it sounds as if it came from a fairy tale. And it is as rare to see them as it would be to see a fairy, you know. So it's very interesting. If you look at the differences, I mean, I can show you, I have pet armadillo. That's a nine-banded armadillo. Oh, with my background, that doesn't work, but
Oh,
yeah.
oh wow! But they are actually kind of big in comparison with the pink fairy armadillo. They are, you know, also probably the name comes from the size. They are,
Exactly. So the one I showed you is more or less a nine-banded armadillo. So you see the bands, you see the carapace, the entire carapace that is made of bone. Now, pink fairy armadillo, that's about the size. It's about 10 centimeters long. It weighs about 100 grams, and it lives underground. So how can you find them, you know? And then it's very funny because they're called pink fairy armadillo because they really, in nature, they have that pink carapace. And you see that this here, that's
yeah,
silky white hair that they have that protects them from the cold. That's
wow,
something that the other armadillos don't have, you know? And they need that to protect themselves from the cold because they're so small, because they lose more temperature to the
yeah.
environment.
Oh, wow, that's very interesting to hear about. And I imagine that in the Pampas, the temperature in the night drops so extreme. Well, not extremely, but drops very fast, and they really need it. Yeah.
Right. So other armadillos, we know that in our area, for example, they dig deeper down when it's cold outside. So when the temperature amplitude, the difference between the highest and the lowest temperature, is very large. So we know that from other armadillos. We don't know it about pink fairy armadillos, but they need to protect themselves from the cold even more than the others.
Yeah.
So, but also from the heat, because in general, armadillos are very susceptible to temperature changes. So that's also something that pink fairy armadillos and other armadillos are exposed to, a lot of heat. So they try not to get outside when it's very hot. So it's ideal for a pink fairy armadillo just to stay underground. But again, it makes it more difficult for us to find them and to study them.
Yeah, but you know, that's how the work is, and
Right.
that's why we need to do it, right? Also, I would like to say that I'm very happy you accepted to have this interview because, well, you are like an expert in pink fairy armadillos, one of the only experts in pink fairy armadillos. 'Cause they are so rare, and you all the journals you have made for the IUCN specialist group, you know, and all your investigations, yeah, they are simply amazing. I recommend my viewers, if you want to learn more about it, to read all the papers that Mariella has published. They are very resourceful and have a lot of information on pink fairy armadillos.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, my main knowledge from about pink fairy armadillos comes from rescued animals. So, for example, environmental authorities find an injured animal, or what is quite common is that people don't know what it is and they see a pink fairy armadillo crossing a road. So they pick it up and they drive 200 kilometers to hand it over to the environmental authorities and say, I found a pink fairy armadillo, or I found something, I don't know what it is. And then the authorities have to drive 200 kilometers back to release it. And sometimes, I mean, these are very, very delicate animals. Usually they die within 8 days in captivity. So sometimes when they are injured, for example, because a dog or a cat found them, they bring them to me so that I can rehab them. And keeping them alive in captivity is a challenge, but it's what makes it interesting to work with wildlife in general. You know, it's always a challenge,
Of
but
course.
it's fascinating.
And by the way, now that you're talking about this, how are your experiences rehabbing these animals? Have you kept them alive the necessary time till releasing them into the wild again, or what challenges, what difficulties have you experienced over the years caring for rescued pink fairy armadillos?
Oh, they drive you crazy. That's about the short version. I once had one. I received it from the authorities because they found it in a small village, and it was threatened by dogs that would kill it. So the authorities asked me to keep it, and I freaked out. I said, well, but I don't want to keep it because I know that it will die within 8 days. And they said, well, you know, somebody has to start studying them so that we can learn from it and improve our rescue protocols. So I had it in my living room for 8 months in a large terrarium. And it was a very interesting experience. It drove me crazy. I tried more than 30 different ingredients and it wouldn't eat anything. So, you know, I would go to the field, to the desert, and collect native berries and insects and everything, and no, it wouldn't eat it. And then by chance, I found a mixture that it would eat, but I could not change anything to that mixture or it wouldn't eat. And it would emerge, come to surface after 9 o'clock, always at night. And if its food plate wasn't there when it came out of its burrow, it would start freaking out and run around like crazy. And so, you know, I was always, you know, panicking that this animal would die of stress. So my life was dominated by a pink fairy armadillo for 8 months because I had to adjust my whole life to that time frame that the pink fairy armadillo would emerge and would want to eat. And then I thought, well, now I have the adequate diets to keep these animals alive. And then I received another rescue animal. I said, well, let's prepare that. And it wouldn't eat it. And that one would only eat worms.
Oh,
So they have individual preferences that are apparently very specific. And so you have to try again with every single animal. So that makes it very difficult to keep them in captivity. And so when we receive one, we usually just examine it, make sure that it is okay, and we bring it back to nature and release it in its habitat, but in a safe place.
Sorry, I'm simply like, wow, because like 8 months feeding it, and then it must have been like, yeah, very difficult. But I imagine that you used all of this to to do your research and gather information about them. For example, the food preference. I imagine that most people didn't even think about it, that they had food preferences and
Right.
individual food preference. And yeah, it's simply astounding. Yeah.
It was a nice experience, yeah. So, but we installed infrared cameras that would tape it when it would come out of its burrow. So we learned a lot about the species that we then could use in the field. And so this next step we have now is when we receive a rescue animal, we want to equip it with a radio transmitter, and then at least follow it for a couple of days, because the radio transmitters have to be very small because the animal is small.
Yeah.
So we tried one device and it was too large, so then I had to send the radio transmitters back, and then the pandemic fell. So now I cannot go to the field. And imagine what? Now, during the pandemic, pink fairy armadillos have shown up everywhere. They know.
Uh,
Usually we get 1 or 2 reports of pink fairy armadillo sightings per year in the entire province of Mendoza, which is 150,000 square kilometers. So now during the pandemic, I had 4 sightings. And I
wow.
couldn't go see them because we were in quarantine. So, well, but that's life.
Yeah,
Life
that's
of a researcher.
life. But it is another wonderful case of how the pandemic has, in some way, helped the environment. Like, for example, with many people inside their homes, many animals started going to places they never went before, or have started to be like themselves again, and in places that were kind of dominated by humans. And wow, pink fairy armadillos. When I thought a friend of mine sent me your email and told, you have to contact her. I know she would really like to talk about this. And I said, yeah, sure, but I had heard about the pink fairy armadillo, but I never knew all of this. I never knew anything. I just like pink fairy armadillo. Will my viewers like it? Will it be a nice species? And then when I only see 3 words, only saw 3 words. First one, data deficient. Well, not exactly a word, but data deficient. The second, very smallest species of armadillo. Also very interesting. In the third was, you know, there is so little known about it that it will just make a feed. I knew it. And also, people, I have an announcement to make. As today we are talking about the smallest armadillo species, I also have another interview online, and it is about the biggest armadillo species, the giant armadillo in Brazil. I am hopeful that I will be posting it soon. I haven't had it. I am coordinating that, but that would be like the cherry on the cake. The smallest and the biggest in the same place. Well, not in the same place, but in the same YouTube channel. Yeah. Please remember to like, to subscribe. And well, Mariella, I would like to talk to you about your NGO. You to talk to us about your NGO and the work you do, because I think that my viewers would really like to support your work after all of the research you have done for pink fairy armadillos.
Well, you know, I work in a lot of places because I'm so fanatic of armadillos in general. And there are not many researchers working with armadillos. So I work as a researcher in Argentina. Pink Fairy Armadillos only occur in Argentina. But I also, I'm the scientific advisor of Armadillos de Chile. There are 3 species of armadillos in Chile, and most people didn't even know that until a couple of years ago. So Armadillo de Chile is a foundation that has done a lot of education work and is now starting also research. And so I'm helping there. And I also collaborate in a research project and conservation project for armadillos in Colombia, in the Llanos of Colombia. So we have an armadillo conservation program that protects or aims at protecting 5 species in Colombia. So yeah, and then I'm also the chair of the IUCN Anteater, Sloth, and Armadillo Specialist Group, where we do a lot of awareness work because armadillos, sloths, and the anteaters are still poorly known, you know. So we have a Facebook page, we have a website where we can receive donations to support conservation work in the field. So we are, I mean, imagine we are 26 experts in the whole world who work in conservation of anteater, sloth, and armadillos. So we're so few. It's really it's actually frustrating, you know. But
Wow,
working,
just 26 experts
yeah,
for a lot of species because sloths are like 6 species, I believe. Yeah, here in Panama we have 3. Then in Brazil, the brown-throated. Yeah, 5, I believe.
yeah, 6 species,
And theaters
and then
is just 1 plus the silkies and the tamanduas. And then armadillos
but
are 17 or 19 species.
22 or 23 depends a little bit on who
Oh,
you ask. But
taxonomic. Yeah, taxonomic.
you mentioned silky anteaters. I mean, that's a classic example. We always thought that there was only 1 species,
And there are
and
actually more species.
there's
Yeah,
7 species.
7.
We just didn't know, you know. And the same happens with a lot of armadillos. So there is so much to study. So we are trying to organize courses, training courses for students in different countries so that we can motivate them and show them how fantastic and how unusual all these species are, and that it's really worth studying them and protecting them, you know. I think a lot of people just don't know about them, and so that's why they don't know that they need protection.
And that's the purpose of this channel and these interviews. It is to raise awareness and highlight the work of several conservation NGOs and several conservation experts in different species of around the world. Yeah, people
That's
also, by the way, the links of all the NGOs that Mariella mentioned, where she worked, will be down below. You can like, follow them, you can donate to them too, and I hope you do. They are really doing an amazing work.
you're doing an amazing job, Fabricio. It's really great that you have this channel and that you show that there are other species, as you know, that the sexy species like giraffes and elephants and tigers that everybody knows. I mean, who had known about pink fairy armadillos? No, I mean that's the most fascinating thing that you have on Earth, and nobody knows about it.
Exactly. And that's something that I want to change. And yeah, many of my viewers have told me that they have learned about a new species when they have seen my interviews. Because, of course, like you said, all the people is paying attention on the big, on the attractive animals. But actually, a pink fairy armadillo could be, and for me is, as the same attractive as a lion or as an elephant, even more because they are greater. An elephant in the wild you can see them commonly in zoos, but the pink fur armadillo, that's simply amazing. By the way,
Yeah,
oh yeah, choke and then I
Excuse me?
no, you were going to say something. Do it
Yeah.
and
No, I think it's really, that's the thing, you know. There are so many species out there that are amazing that we just don't know about them because they are very difficult to study, they're difficult to find. And for example, armadillos, you know, we've had several film teams coming to Argentina because they wanted to film Pink Fairy Armadillos, and we can't find them. So we miss on that opportunity to showcase that species just because we can't show it. So that's the thing, you know, and so we have to rely on stuffed animals to show that they are fascinating. That's really a feature of Pink Fairy Armadillo, that they have this vertical butt plate that they use to compact the soil. You know, they dig and then they back up and they compact the soil behind them. So in front of them, they have a space where they can, you know, search for food and breathe. And then they have this diamond shaped, let's see if that works, the diamond shaped tail. They use it as fifth legs so they can stand up, and then they free their front legs and they can dig. So I mean, where else can you find that in nature? It's such a fascinating animal.
exactly.
So,
And also I think I forgot, but you know, they have you know, like their position in nature, they do help in decreasing erosion, right? Or I think I read about it somewhere that they, by doing all of this, you know, they are helping to stabilize the soil and in the ecosystem or something like that was.
well, in armadillos in general, you know, they bring oxygen to the soil because they move it around. They, by digging, for example, they also dig seeds. They eat insects. I mean, what would we do without insect eaters? I mean, we will get run over by all the ants in the world. So
Yeah,
you know, it's very difficult to tell what the reason for being is of a species, why it is here. We usually find that out when it's gone, and then it's too late, you know. And
that's oh yeah, that's the case that is happening right now with some amphibian species. Sometimes people don't pay attention to them, and at the end, when they go extinct or almost disappear, is when they discover that the insect populations are booming, that they have all kind of mosquitoes and flies in their homes, and then I want the amphibians back. But you know, it is difficult because you drive it, you drove them out of their home because it's their home and we built on it, and then you want
right,
them back, but that's simple conservation. Yeah.
right. So it's very difficult, you know, and we are. I mean, who are we to decide which species can survive and which can't? I mean,
Exactly.
that's not our right to decide that. So Pink Fairy Armadillos have the same right to be on this planet as we are. So we need to do something to protect them and to protect amphibians and protect other species. And we need to find a way to reduce our impact on the planet.
By the way, Mariella, now going back to the Pink Fairy Armadillo, I read that they actually were kept in captivity before in the 1930s, I believe, in the Brookfield Zoo in Chicago and in USA. Are there any plans to keep or to maintain an ex situ population? I know this is a very difficult species you mentioned before, and for example, their feeding preferences. And but do you think there could be a small possibility, even if it is in Argentina?
I don't think so. the individuals that survived for several years in US Zoo, for example, in Brookfield Zoo, these were extraordinary. And it's very funny because they didn't get a natural diet, but that was, again, an example of that individual preference. They got what they, they ate something and that's what they were fed and they survived on that. So, I mean, that's fine. Now, the thing is with armadillo that some species have never bred in captivity. They are very susceptible to stress. So for example, giant armadillos or pink fairy armadillos or naked tail armadillos have never reproduced in captivity. So thinking about an ex situ conservation project is far beyond my imagination, because we first need to know more about the species. So, for example, I know from anecdotal evidence that pink fairy armadillos have 1 or 2 offspring, but that's all I know. We suspect that they have 1 litter per year around Christmas, because we usually find, or the sightings are usually concentrated in February, March, and it's almost always juvenile males. So we suspect that this is when they become independent and they search for their own territory. But that's all we know. We don't know, if they have contact, if we could, for example, keep a male and a female together in one enclosure, if that would work or not. And
exactly. And talking about it, I believe that, well, right now there is at least no evidence of bay offspring pink fairy armadillos. Has somebody ever seen a baby pink fairy armadillo?
Actually, I recently, last year, I talked to a local who found 2 baby pink fairy armadillos. And, he waited to see if the mother would show up, and she didn't, and the offspring died. And he said they were 3 or 4 centimeters long. And that's all I know. So, I mean, imagine the pink fairy armadillo is 10 centimeters long in total. So, the offspring can't be very large. But we have absolutely no idea about reproduction, for example. So I hope that someday I can find out more about it, but it's difficult. But that's the fun of doing research,
And what can you do to research more, or to find all of this information? Because, yeah, if it is that rare to see, how is there any plans to, or any project, any initiative? Okay, not disturbing them, but finding a way to kind of see them or interact with them more, to learn about them. Because, wow, we, of course, this is a species that has always been rare, and but still not knowing about them in 2020 is like, wow, this species must be, yeah.
Yeah, we have tried different ways to find them and haven't succeeded yet. I mean, I can't just go to the desert with a shovel and try to find it underground, because it would take all my life. But they sometimes emerge and they walk about 5 meters and then they dig in the ground again. So if you're very lucky, you'll find the tracks, but that's it. So it's not really a good approach. So we've been thinking about using, infrared detectors to see if we can find them underground, things like that. Hasn't worked yet, so I'm very confident that at least with our radio tracking study, we will be able to get, at least some data to know how much they dig per night, if they are territorial, if they stay in one place, or if they just dig around. Because we did a study on fossilized pink fairy armadillo burrows, and it was really crazy what my colleagues found. Because these were just, you know, burrows, crossing burrows, and it didn't look like a stable burrow that you find, for example, in nine-banded armadillos, where nine-banded armadillos go back to that burrow and they have kind of a cave there or a nest. So we don't even know if they have, you know, a stable burrow, or if they're digging all the time underground, which is what makes us think, based on the findings of paleontologists.
Wow.
So
like if they were kind of nomads, you know, they are always digging, looking for food, and when do they rest? Like, and that's another thing. Are they predated? Do they have predators? You know, because, for example, in most cases, um, animals like armadillos, gophers, well, animals that have burrows, they try to, you know, to secure the burrow, because in any moment there comes a snake, there comes any other animal and eats it. But if you are digging all the time, then how you know if there is nothing behind you? Like, what if there's a predator behind you, and then you just keep digging, like, you know?
right. I mean, that's a very good question. You know, that's why they backfill their tunnels, so they back up and they close the burrow behind them, so that, for example, a snake could not get into their burrow. But still, I mean, we have seen several pink fairy armadillos that have been attacked by dogs or cats, because even though they don't come to the ground very often, but you know, when they are digging, for example, they find a hard surface or something. For example, when they get to a road, and then the soil is very compact and they cannot dig through it, they emerge and they walk over the road. So that's when people see it, or when dogs or cats find it. So if a dog or a cat can hunt them, a fox could do it. Maybe a raptor, an owl that hunts at night. It's very difficult to say, because also they're so small, and finding then the remains in, for example, a fox stomach, I mean, you would have to be very lucky if you did that. But I'm sure they have predators. I mean, everything is connected in the ecosystem. They eat insects, and I'm sure they get eaten by somebody. So probably I would go with foxes. We have several wild cats, small wild cats here. So I think they're also good candidates. Maybe snakes. Who knows?
Wow. You know, this interview has gotten me with many questions in my head, like we don't really know this species. What is this species do, like crazy things, and we don't even know about it. You know, this is because yesterday I saw a new movie, Underwater. It is with, I don't remember, Kristen Stewart. Well, the thing is, it is in the Fosa de las Marianas, you know,
Mariana's
the
Ditch.
Marianas Fish. Yeah, that's it. Well, there's an underwater basin. Then there is an earthquake, and there are not monsters, but like some creatures. You know, the thing is that got me like, what if this Pink Fairy Armadillo you have something like that we don't really know, and it's something that really gets me thinking. What if? Oh, by the way, when were they discovered? By not European, but yeah, you know, when they were officially like named and like this is a new species.
That was also in the 19th century, and it was really European explorers, naturalists, who found all these animals. So there are very funny stories here about, for example, when the railway in Argentina, in Mendoza, was built. It was constructed by the Englishmen, and so there was a British engineer was supervising the whole construction. And while digging to put the railways in, they found Pink Fairy Armadillo, and that Englishman said, "What is that?" And the local explained to him that it was Pink Fairy Armadillo, which in Spanish is called Pichi Ciego. Pichi means small in the language of the Mapuche, and ciego means blind because you don't see the eyes. So this guy was so fascinated by it that he named a railway station Pichi Ciego in honor to that little animal. So it's very funny. And if you look at, for example, the records in the Natural History Museum of London, I think they have 6 Pink Fairy Armadillos in their collection, and 5 of them or 4 of them were collected between 1874 and 1875. So around that time. So of course, I mean, a lot of people came from Europe and saw Pink Fairy Armadillo. You even have Charles Darwin talked about Pink Fairy Armadillos. I mean, they're so unusual that it caught the attention of a lot of naturalists, obviously, and it still does. I mean, you can't resist the Pink Fairy Armadillo.
Well, I would really like to learn more about them, to see them, if it is in the wild or in a semi-captivity, like the rescued individuals you had. I don't care, but I would like to see them, like, in real life. What is it like? Because, yeah, of course, plushies and stuffed individuals are something, but seeing them alive and in reality is like simply another thing. Yeah.
I was speechless when I saw my first Pink Fairy Armadillo that was rescued. I mean, I couldn't speak for a weekend. I was so amazed by that little animal. Really, it's the most incredible thing. I mean, with that silky white hair, it looks like a little rodent, but it has a carapace, so it's kind of a mixture that you don't understand. And I had some friends when I had that Pink Fairy Armadillo living here. I had some friends from Europe coming to Mendoza for a congress, and they were obsessed. They wanted to see that Pink Fairy Armadillo. And a friend of mine sat in my living room close to the terrarium and said, "I will wait until it emerges." And he sat there all night, and the Pink Fairy Armadillo did not show up. So he went to sleep. And half an hour later, I swear, half an hour later, the Pink Fairy Armadillo came out and ate, because we saw it then in the cameras. Another friend of mine had the very same experience. So they're very picky about who is going to see them and who won't. And one funny thing that nobody knows is that they scream. Have you heard about the screaming hairy armadillo?
Yeah, of course. I knew that some armadillos do scream, but I didn't know the Pink Fairy did.
Yeah, that's the most amazing thing. I can't see you. I don't know what happened to my computer, but hope you can see me.
Yeah. Don't worry, I can see you.
Good, here I am. So they scream when they are frightened, and it is, a high-pitched scream that you could mistake for a bird. It's very strange, and a friend of mine is now analyzing the scream to describe it. It's a distress call, and it's even more difficult to hear it, obviously, than to see a Pink Fairy Armadillo, but it's one of these other amazing features of this little creature.
Oh my God, I love this interview, really, really, really. I'm learning so much about this. Well,
also you see, I love talking about them, so.
Now that I think of, you're not my 10th. You're like my 8th guest that we had in the YouTube channel, yeah.
Cool.
And that's also very good to have you, because you're the 8th. From May to here, of course I spent like 3 months without having interviews, But let's say from September to here, I have had like 4 or 5 interviews, and that's like a feat for me, you know. Like I still sometimes don't believe how I get to interview people like you. They're working in conservation, really. It is, you know, like oh, unimaginable. I will not say that word. You know, sorry for that. I
But
think we need to cut
you're
that.
doing an amazing job and really love this interview. So I'm having a lot of fun, and I hope you are going to have a lot more interviews and a great audience who gets to learn about these unusual and fantastic animals.
But sorry, I got like a laughter attack. Mariella, before we end the interview, would you tell my guests, my viewers, sorry, I always ask my guests to do it, like a message, an inspiring message to keep them going, to do change, to support the work that every and all of you conservationists do for our planet.
Well, I think the most important thing is to remember that we don't love what we don't know, and we will not protect what we don't love. And you have to be open and get out of that box of the traditional sexy animals like elephants and giraffes and tigers. There is a diversity out there of incredible animals that need our help, need to be studied so that we can help them, because we don't even know where to start to protect them because we don't know the animals. And just watch this channel to learn about unusual animals, to support, to do, act also locally. I mean, sometimes you forget about the amazing nature you have in your backyard because you look too far. But there's a lot of work to do. It is an amazing job. I mean, I just love being a scientist and doing conservation. And I can only invite all the young people out there who are watching this to follow a career in science and in conservation. We need more of you. So I do hope that a lot of people get your message and follow your track.
Thanks for that message, Mariella. It, I do think it was really inspiring and it's simply brilliant. You know, like the cherry on the top of the cake for this read. Well, people, it is now the moment when we say goodbye to our guests. Mariella, again, thank you for your time. Thank you for being here. I would really love to do more events with you or with colleagues that would like to have an interview with me. I would really like it. This was very interesting, and I do know that we raised awareness about Pink Fairy Armadillos today, and that many people will know about them soon. Thanks a lot.
I do hope so. Thank you so much. It was a lot of fun. So I hope we will stay in touch and have another interview sometime about some other fascinating animals out there.
Of course. Well, people, hope you like it. Remember to subscribe and remember to donate too. I will let you the links to the websites of the NGOs that Mariella works in and the donation webpage. Also, if I can, social media too. Well, have a nice day. Bye.